Hello and welcome to week 5 of Advanced Child Theory. I wanted to let you know that I am thoroughly enjoying your discussion board postings from the last few weeks on Piaget and Vygotsky. As you know, those are two of the most well-known theorists in the field of education, and so it's important that we take the time to make sure we have a solid foundation in what it was that they believed, how it's actually being utilized in the classroom, and then deciding if any or all or none of those theories actually are going to be part of your own personal theory. So again, don't forget that these journals, the discussion board postings, they are all helping you to start to refine your own personal theory, which is what you're going to be articulating at the end of the semester. So this week we're going to move on to a different theorist, and you're going to notice that we have skipped a chapter in the book, so we're not necessarily going in chronological order, but we're moving on to Benjamin Bloom this week, and so probably the first thing that comes to mind is Bloom's taxonomy, which is pretty much the biggest work of his career. So the reason that we skipped over to Bloom was because he kind of goes along with some of the theorists that we've already discussed. So even in the textbook, it talks about how we can find similarities with Dewey, with Piaget, with Vygotsky, and so just kind of wanting to keep things grouped together so that it's going to make the most sense to you is why we're going to go ahead and do Bloom this week. So when reading through the chapter, you're going to find that really along the lines of the taxonomies, he was also looking at 3 different domains, and he really was looking at mastery. And I think that's something that we need to remember as we're working with our students, is that our goal for them is to be able to master the material that we're trying to teach them. But it also means that we need to allow for different levels of comprehension and application in order for them to reach full mastery. So when you look at Bloom's taxonomy, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are extremely familiar with the different graphics that are out there, you notice that we're going from the lowest level of thinking, which is remembering, up to the highest order of thinking, which in the revised taxonomy is creating. And that goes very well with what I'm going to be asking you to do this week. So when you go into Blackboard this week, you will find here is an article that was written by Bloom. And so as I think that it's always important to get some primary sources, because then we truly are getting what the theorist was meaning to say and not leaving it up to interpretation. Here's the PowerPoint that goes along with Bloom for this week. There is a TED Talk video embedded in there, and I did check and make sure that the link worked, and it does. And so this is just kind of a talk about how we need to be teaching the students of the future. We all know that the students that we have in our classrooms now look very different than even a generation ago. And so we want to make sure that we're using different methods to be able to reach these students. And that really is kind of the heart of Bloom's taxonomy. I've given you a couple of resources. This is just the Bloom's taxonomy information from Vanderbilt University, who has a fantastic center for teaching and learning. And then here's just a quick YouTube video that goes over the revisions that were done with Bloom's taxonomy. Nothing major changed. Some of the wording changed a little bit, but the concept behind the taxonomy did not change. It goes from the lower level thinking to the higher order thinking. So again, those are just some resources to help solidify this information for you. As always, you have your journal, but what I'm going to have you do this week is, because creating is the highest level in Bloom's taxonomy, I am going to have you create something. Now, this is not something that I want you to spend hours and hours and hours on, but I want you to use this opportunity to make this very, very practical for you. Think of this as a teaching tool. So what I want you to do is I want you to create some sort of graphic or presentation that eventually you're going to share with the rest of us. But what I want you to do is to start off by introducing Bloom's taxonomy. So whether you want to use a graphic, whether or not you want to do a voiceover where you actually are explaining it, it's completely up to you. But think of this as your introduction. Pretend that somebody has never heard of Bloom's taxonomy before, and so they're going to need to know what it is, what it means, what it's used for. And then I'm going to ask you to pick a theme, whether it is something as simple as the beach, which is what you're going to see that I did on mine. And it can go all the way up to maybe it's going to be the Civil War that you're going to be doing with high schoolers. But make this practical for you. Think about the age group, the grade that you might be interested in teaching, or if you are already in the classroom, something that you are doing or are planning on doing that you could use this for. And so then you're going to look at the 6 levels and you're going to describe how you are going to make sure that students are learning the material at all 6 levels. So my new favorite tool is called Padlet. I don't know if you've ever used it before. It's padlet.com. But it's super simple to use. You can choose from different layouts, different backgrounds. You do not have to use Padlet. You are welcome to make a PDF. You're welcome to make a PowerPoint presentation. You're welcome to make a video. This is completely up to you. You have full creative license on it, as long as you make sure that you meet all of the requirements. So if you go onto my Padlet, you're going to see that I made it really simple. So here's my graphic that explains Bloom's taxonomy. And then all I did was I said that my theme is the beach. And I did not give specific examples because I don't want to give you any ideas, but just so you could see how I set it up. So I have the 6 levels here. So for remembering, you're going to want to make sure that you write your objective. And if you've never written a learning objective before, it's extremely simple to do. I think too many people try and make it a little bit harder than it needs to be. But when you write an objective, it normally starts with the student will. And then you use some kind of verb. And in Bloom's taxonomy, they've already given you tons and tons of verbs that go in each one of these categories. So the student will verb when they, whatever the activity is going to be. So it's only supposed to be 1 sentence. And so once you've written your objective, you can either give like a quick little blurb about what it is they're going to be doing. If you want to find an example on the internet or take a picture of something, this really is for you, but I want you to think of it as a teaching tool. I always like to think that I'm creating things that people are going to be able to use in the future. So let's pretend that you were asked to do a presentation on how to implement Bloom's taxonomy in the classroom. Here's your chance to put it together. And while you are creating it, you're actually meeting all 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So like I said, Padlet's just my new favorite one because it's so easy to use, but there's a million different tools out there that you can use. So just have fun with it. So that is my example, just so you can kind of see how I got started on it. But you have, as I said, complete freedom in how you do this. Just make sure that you have an introduction. Make sure you tell me what your particular theme or subject matter is, and then make sure that you have addressed all layers of Bloom's taxonomy. And so when you're done with it, there is a place in assignments where you can upload it so that I can grade it. But I'm also asking you, when you are done, to put it into the discussion board. I made a forum for the discussion board where we can share all of our ideas together. And again, it's not because we're trying to steal somebody's idea, but please don't submit it in the discussion board until you have submitted it to me. And so that way we know that everything that's already in the discussion board has already come to me, and there's no chance for making any changes. But I just thought it would be a great way for us to not only apply Bloom's taxonomy, but to actually become so familiar with it that we're putting it into practice. So I think that's it for this week. I hope you have fun with this. And I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week in week 6.